Hi, my name is Jordan. I am a special education teacher from the UK. I share my passion for everything communication, sensory regulation, and fun lesson ideas for my classroom of disabled pupils aged 4 to 11. Each week, I am joined by experts in the field, answering your questions and sharing our knowledge and experience working alongside our beautiful young people. Let's get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sensory Classroom podcast. My name is Jordan, and today I am joined by Lauren, or at Victorious, who is an ex-SEN teacher, now supporting parents and teenagers, young people, who are those SEN Inbetweeners who are not coping in mainstream, finding themselves at home or excluded or school refusing or needs not being met in school. And I really want it to be a conversation on what we can do as educators to do better for these children and supporting parents to know and fight for these children's needs, because everyone deserves education. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, Jordan. Thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. This is such an important conversation and such a conversation close to my heart. I don't know if you know, 10 years before, I worked just in a specialist education school, and I was kind of blind to this because all of the children's needs were being met how they should be within my school, within reason. But at the moment, I am actually in a special education setting that's alone, attached to a mainstream school. So I'm seeing every day these mainstream children, with some of them with higher needs than the children in my class, and how that's managed. Sometimes they're really well supported, sometimes they have really great support staff who are really highly trained, and teachers who completely give them a sense of belonging and inclusion in their classes. And I'm also seeing the other side of things as well. I'm seeing children that are in the corridors. I'm seeing TAs without plans, that are having to think off the cuff, that are having to deal with really tricky situations, and children whose ultimately educational but also mental health needs just not being met. So I can see firsthand the need for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so important to have because, like yourself, I worked in specialist provision for 6 years. Absolutely lovely. But before then, I was in mainstream. So I did my degree in special education, and then I went into mainstream, and then I eventually went into autistic provision. And the need for inclusion is so important, but it's just not happening in the way we would like it to. We have these amazing centres for children with autism with almost like high support needs, and I think they do really well. Like you say, it's just absolute everyday practice. This is how we do it. We use our visuals, we use all those sensory breaks, just secondhand nature. But then in a mainstream setting, it's high masking, it's children fall through the gaps because we have a big thing is assessments, it's grades. Oh, well, they're actually doing really well educationally, so let's not put a plan in place, let's not focus on those other needs because they're ticking a box of the grades.
Yeah, because sometimes these children are very high achievers, actually. They're your million-word readers in my school. They're your top, oh my goodness, they're already ready for year 6 SATs in 8 years old children. But it doesn't mean that their needs and their sensory needs and communication needs and social needs aren't just as prevalent as the children in my class that are working at a very different level academically.
Exactly that, and I think it looks different, and people are like, oh, if we go to that old language of high functioning, it's like, what does that even look like? It's actually not like that. It's a spectrum. It's They're still experiencing the sensory needs and everything, but different. It looks different for them, and because they are academic in that way, how we see as academia, it's but at what cost? They're wearing that mask. At the end of the day, they're fine in school, I quote, but actually at the end of the day, they're coming home, they're burning out, and they have a big 4 o'clock explosion because
Yeah.
it's like, wow, I couldn't move. I'm trying to socially interact in the way that is meant for me. A lot of young people with autism will be very high empathetic as well, which is another misconception. So they can be really highly empathetic, and all day they're thinking, I did that wrong, I did this. And, when you have, mixed needs as well, someone with ADHD as well as that, it's just constantly exhausting. And it's almost in a mainstream setting, it's like, oh, well, are they choosing that behaviour? Well, actually, no, they're talking to you. Behaviour is communication, the biggest communication. And I think then we end up with kids in the corridor rather than, okay, what can we do? Who is it a problem for if they're sitting there, with a visual timetable, with something that meets them where they're at, not the visuals that we
When
use.
we're talking about the kids in the corridor, we're talking about literally kids that are educated in cupboards, under stairs, in miscellaneous rooms, in outside the head teacher's office, in corridors. They are taught in corridors. And sometimes it is because they are not coping in the classroom. But I still feel like children need to be taught in an education setting. So yes, okay, the lights might be too bright, it might be too loud, it might be too busy in the classroom. Okay, fine. Then it needs to be in the child's best interest to be educated elsewhere. It shouldn't be for because they are disrupting the rest of the class. It shouldn't be because for the benefit of the 30 other children that this child can't be in the class. It needs to be benefit for that individual, beneficial for that individual child to make that decision. Ultimately, also, movement breaks and visuals support all children. Just
Absolutely.
because it can't, just because we're creating it for this one child to help support them to, you know, have them as part of belonging, as part of this classroom. And if that's what's needed, then, dimmer lights, visuals, movement breaks, if that's what's needed, then that doesn't hinder any other child from learning.
It absolutely doesn't, and, so often in mainstream I've heard, and unfortunately in other settings as well, like they've got like a fiddle toy or something like that, it's distracting for the other children, and actually, you know what? Kids and teenagers are actually full of empathy. If you can actually explain, well, actually, and eventually teach them to advocate for themselves, I need this to focus, or this helps me feel calm. If we give children and young people those skills to advocate for themselves, more often than not, the other children will go, okay, and
Exactly,
they'll
so
accepting of
accepting,
it.
so
Yeah, so
accepting.
accepting.
And also, I think if they're so easily distracted from their work task, from a silent fidget toy, then your lesson just isn't that interesting.
Absolutely. Or maybe they need one as well.
Or maybe they need one as well. Or maybe they can be part of them, but maybe like this child gets easily distracted. So maybe like that's not this child's fault. That's they shouldn't leave the classroom because of that. Maybe they need a room divider because they get easily distracted. Maybe that's a them thing. Or maybe they need their hoodie up so that they can have, some barriers. Maybe that's their own sensory need. That's not up to the child to change. There's a couple of quotes going on in my head. One of them is, "If a flower doesn't bloom, you don't change the flower, you change the environment it's in to help them bloom." And that is exactly what we're talking about here. If the child isn't coping in the classroom, if they're distracting, if they're disruptive, all these kind of words that we're hearing, we don't change the child. We don't, we change the environment. Now, sometimes that does look like moving them out into a different class. Sometimes it looks like maybe using a quiet area, but also sometimes that just looks like offering movement breaks, visuals, schedules, and dimming the lights, offering fidget toys. Encourage, change that environment in order to better suit their needs. And another quote that comes to mind is also, "So called mild autism doesn't mean one experiences autism mildly. It means you experience their autism mildly. You have no idea how hard they have had to work to get to where they are." And I think that's what we're talking about, isn't it? Teachers, if you are seeing mild autism, you have no idea what's going on under the surface for this young person. Who knows? Maybe my children in my class are low maskers because they are less aware or less caring of what other people think around them. They stim freely. They communicate through their body and through behaviors because they don't have that maybe awareness or care of what other people think around them. But the children in mainstream class, maybe they do care. Maybe they are aware. Maybe they have been told that they're different. Maybe they, have some kind of trauma in the past of having to, keep it down, keep their stims down because it's seen as behavior. But that doesn't mean their need isn't just as high as the children that you see flapping and rocking and squealing in my class. And that's they need their needs that need meeting. It's not a choice.
Yeah, this is it. It just looks different, and that's it. Like so many people I speak to, adults included, they're like, "Oh, I've never really thought that I stim," and I'll look at their hands and their nails, and they're being picked, and they will go, "Well, I do this with my foot," and I'm like, "Yeah, that's how you stim." But then you also on the backhand of that, my absolute bugbear is always, well, everyone's a little bit autistic. No, they're not. They're not. Like, you either are autistic or you're not. It may be that you've got high or low support needs, but it's actually it's a neurological condition. So you either are or you're not. We might have little tendencies, so to speak. It's like, I have a craving for chocolate. I doesn't mean I'm pregnant. I just have that tendency right now. And I think, and this is all well-meaning of the community, because people are starting to learn about it, all these well-meaning things, but it's like, well, actually, no, that really
Yeah, because
devalues
ultimately,
it.
no, autistic traits are human traits.
Hmm.
It is a human trait to have interests. It's a human trait to feel anxious sometimes. It's a human trait to feel safest in your own, environment. It is a human trait to feel a little bit uncomfortable with transitions and change. Those are kind of butterfly feelings. They're all normal human experiences. So I think people hear these things and think, well, I feel like that. Maybe everyone's a little bit autistic. I think that's where that comes from, isn't it? But it's the impact of those feelings that makes it autism, as well as sensory. It's having all of it
Yeah.
at varying levels and changing throughout the day, but it's having that impact on your life. It is magnified to the point where it becomes debilitating. Not for everything, not for everyone. It looks different in everyone, but that's what makes it autism. That's what makes it diagnosable. So yes, you might share similarities, you might share traits, if you will, want for a better word, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's autism. But also, as we're talking about it, maybe it is autism. Maybe you're saying everyone's a little bit autistic because you're recognizing those high traits in yourself and you never even thought that you could be, because it looks really different in lots of people. Lots of women are only realizing that they're autistic because their children are being diagnosed with high support needs, and then they never even knew that they are autistic with low support needs all their life.
If I had a pound for the amount of mums particularly, but dads as well, that look at their own children and like, okay, maybe but I do that. And it first starts that dialogue of, they're fine because I do that. And I'm like, okay. And then you see, that light bulb moment, and even some of my parent trainings that I've done, you can see the parents going, oh, so it's masking that I've done. I don't have, I'm not, my sensory needs don't look like that. And I do like to be social. And that's another myth that's being bust. Like, some children that I love, work with, love being social. Um, and then they're like, okay, maybe now that, because that's very different in the 90s. If you're a millennial, it
Yeah,
was
I
very
mean,
different
it was,
then.
"Are you flapping? Are you on your toes? Do you
Mhm.
like trains?" was the kind of the tick box, right?
Literally, yeah,
Of course, not everybody fits that
yeah.
model. So
I mean,
if teachers have, if they're not aware, they might be listening to this thinking, well, if they're high masking, how do I even know that there's even needs to be met? So as that mainstream teacher going back, in your career, how did you know, and then how did you support them with those needs?
I think the amount of times I wish I could go back to newly qualified 21-year-old me, and 'cause my advice always now is listen to the parents. Because so often, being a newly qualified teacher years ago in mainstream, and the parents would be going, "Oh, well, at home they need this comfort, and they're melting down," they would say, and they're really struggling at home. And I, like so many teachers now, would say, "But they're fine at school." But then why are they fine at school? Number one, they could be masking, 100%. They have routine at school quite often, which is predictable. They see the same face every day, and they have strategies in place. But I definitely look back and think, I wish I knew what I knew now
Yeah.
from going into SEN environments, coming out of those, and even being in a autistic provision from age 4 to 19, and was leading emotion regulation, doing all the PSHE side of things and the behaviour side of things, which I'm so passionate about. Even there, we're turning away. I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent now. Sorry, we're turning away 80 odd children a year because they don't. These children, even with a diagnosis, they don't fit the mold of a school like the one that you work at, or they don't fit that mold. So we're turning them away and they're going to a mainstream. And we're talking in London as well. If they're going to a big, big mainstream setting, absolutely what I would then say to those teachers is listen to the parents. How are that child at home? But it's so easy for us to go, oh, is it because of the parenting? Is it because of this? Is it because of trauma? And it's so often, is there another need? Like the amount of parents I speak to that then themselves have later been diagnosed with autism or ADHD, and it's, oh, well, they have bipolar personality disorder, anxiety, depression, and all these things. And so many people are now going, that actually, no, it's not that. It actually is this. And I think the more we can listen to parents who know their children better than anyone, the more we can then support them in the classroom. We can support them to not see that behaviour at home as well. Because so many children that are ticking the boxes, working hard at school, and especially if they're, high achieving academically, they are the ones that fall through the gap. They are the ones that don't have their needs met because they're not seeing that behaviour. And but at home they're then seeing it. And it's like, why are we almost waiting for that exhaustion, waiting for that burnout, where prevention's better than cure? Cure is the wrong word, but I mean for those needs, but the prevention of putting those strategies in place, putting those needs on
Yeah.
the
So
break.
rather than waiting for dysregulation to happen and then giving them the squeezes and then offering them a break and then offering them visuals, then offering them sensory stuff, let's do it prevention. Let's do it before. We don't need to get to dysregulation before we put those things in place. So if parents then, so that's for teachers. If parents are listening, and this is exactly what's happening, the 4 o'clock burnout is
Yeah.
real. They are being told by teachers they're not doing it at home. It must be something you're doing. You're just not being
Oh,
strict enough, or whatever it is.
yeah.
Whatever it is. What do these parents do about that at home? What are, actionable things that they could be putting in place to support their child, including what do they say to the school?
I think in terms of what to say to the school, and as sad as it is, have to carry on having those conversations, keep your logs of what's happening and look for patterns, I find. Because, the stress bucket throughout the day, often it looks like parents go to me, oh, it looks like they're just having, they're getting upset over nothing. Is it nothing? Or is it that their bus was 5 minutes late? They then were sitting on a chair that was scratching them. There was a different teacher, it was a supply teacher in the daytime, and all these little things adding in all day long. So it's all about, I think, working with the school and working with home in terms of prepping for change and all those things, because although I might be masking throughout the day, these things are filling into that stress bucket all day long. And then at the end of the day, it's like, boom, that's the explosion. So in terms of what parents can do is absolutely advocate for your child. You're the biggest advocate, and I know it shouldn't be as exhausting as it is. That is the really sad case, and obviously then we go into local authorities and having to have those conversations. It's a real hard fight, um, especially when it is children like this that don't look like they're outwardly struggling. I think as well at home, obviously breaks at home really, really work, and obviously having that time and expression. And I think that's why we do see that at home, because the mask comes off because they feel safe. And for years I've been saying to parents, they feel safe with you, and I can say about my own children, why are they like this for me? They're good as gold at nursery because they're safe with you. And although it's not good to hear in the moment, it's like, well, actually, what is that behaviour telling you? Because the sad thing is, in 5, 10, 15 years time, that's only going to look more like anxiety and depression. And then I think definitely teaching young people about who they are. There's a really good resource that I love, and I sing its praise all the time. I think it's really good for young people, especially teenagers, that are trying to become more self-aware. On Autistic Society, there's a really great resource called Know Your Normal, and it's about assessing what's normal for you on the day to day. Like, what are your hobbies? What time do you usually sleep? What do you normally eat? Do you have like your little habits and routines? What does swimming normally look like for you? Those kind of things. And then it's a way, and I even found it useful myself, because it's one of those things that you go, hang on a minute, today I did wake up late. I didn't want to play my normal game or whatever it was. I didn't do that. And it's like a check in about that emotional regulation, because as much as I love emotional regulation in a sensory classroom, you've got your visual zones regulation, all that wonderful stuff. Emotional regulation isn't a one size fits all. when you're talking teenagers, especially in a mainstream school, they're not gonna whack out their colourful inside out zones of regulation, are they? They want something that is private to them and they know how to check in. And we've got these apps and like things like Calm and that these days as well, which is really great. But I think bespoke strategy, especially when it comes to emotional regulation, is the way forward. What does it look like for you? Is it energy level based rather than with zones of regulation? We see it often, and it's almost what I struggle with it sometimes. It looks like a ranking. It's like red. You
Yeah,
can't
so
get
some
to
schools do
the
it like that, don't they?
yeah,
Sometimes I've actually heard a school say we're a green class, like as in like we that's the expectation that we stay on green. And I was like, this isn't zones of regulation. Like they
no,
very clearly say all colours are equal, all colours
yeah,
are okay. But yeah,
mm,
lots of settings take it and basically turn it into a traffic light system.
yeah, exactly that. And I think it's that like you absolutely you can feel red. It's okay to go in the red zone. And I think it's more of a spectrum. And then when you go to teenagehood, you have so many more emotions there. You've got embarrassment and you have well, there's less faux puberty in the mix there as well. There's all other complex emotions that are so hard for any teenager to
And you can feel two
navigate.
of things at once, right? You can feel excited about something and incredibly anxious and fidgety. So is that yellow? Is that red? Is that orange? Like it gets
Yeah.
confusing, doesn't it? So
Mhm.
when you're in those early stages of understanding emotions, it's really clearly to put it into those four categories. But as your
Yeah.
understanding develops, it does become muddy, doesn't it? Because feelings are so mixed and paralleled and all of these things. So then it can become incredibly difficult to
Absolutely.
categorize, especially if you're autistic and you like things being, fitting the rules. I mean, feelings just don't fit the rules. I can cry when I'm happy. I can feel anxious when I'm excited about something. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
fit those rules. So having a bespoke strategy that actually fits them and makes sense to them on
Mm.
what it looks like, what it feels like when it happens,
Yeah,
it
and
gives them autonomy and understanding and links words to the feelings that they're actually feeling.
absolutely. I think because not a one size fits all.
It would be
Like
a
you
really
say,
lovely resource, like an audit, to use that National Autistic Society. What was it called?
know you're normal.
Know Your Normal. It'd be really great to use that as an audit for any transitions into different classes with new teachers.
Yeah,
If parents could fill that
wonderful.
out, or if teenagers could fill that out, young people could fill that out about themselves, if you feel brave enough to share that, because it's pretty, honest and open to give that information over. But if you feel comfortable to, it could really help your educators to understand what your normal is for you, so they could understand, oh, they're actually not moving so much today, like that's actually a bad thing. That's actually, like, maybe they're not learning, maybe they're so anxious that they're not comfortable and relaxed and therefore not learning in my classroom, rather than they're looking still and ready, and actually that not being what still and ready and focused looks like for them.
Exactly that. I think it's feeling are so abstract and it's like, well actually what's quotation normal for one person isn't normal for the other person. Like if we see the zone of regulation under like the symbol for like calm with someone sitting, well actually some calm for someone else is dancing.
Could be
That's their
pacing
calm.
or
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And again it goes as well with the bespoke strategies. You know, going for a regulation walk or going to the sensory room doesn't work for everyone. Other people want music smashing in their ears, or they just want to gently tap, or they just need silence, they need noise. It's not a one size fits all. And I think that's what I'm
No.
really passionate about is working on emotional regulation to be different for every individual, because
And
that's
for
what it
all the
is.
teachers that are saying, "Oh, well, how can I do it bespoke? I've got 34 kids in my class." Well, you just believe them. Give them the choices, have them available, and believe them that when they pick a choice, that is going to be right for them until proven otherwise. So have the fidgets out, have the calming music on, have the movement breaks available. They don't have to do it. That's the point, I think, that believe them. When the child says, "I don't want to do a sensory break," maybe they don't need it in that moment. Maybe they're already so alert that they don't need a movement break. Maybe they just need a calm sit under the table. If all those options are available and accepted within that time given, and you believe them, give them the benefit of the doubt, then you are meeting your whole class's needs. And I say until proven otherwise, because sometimes children need to try something to know if it doesn't work or not. So allow them all to have the fidgets, and then you'll soon see who it helps focus and who it helps distract. And then you can kind of manage that from then on. But they might have to try the fidget in order to even know themselves if they need it or not.
Exactly, and I think giving it to a lot of children, because what I want to speak to about now is like pathological demand avoidance. So when you have a individual with a PDA profile as well, if you're going, okay, you need to go for sensory walk, you need to do this, they're going to go, no, I do not. So also need to then think about how do we then make emotional regulation not seem like a demand? Because then that's another demand on them that you're putting. They're already dysregulated. They feel a complete loss of control. And then you're telling them exactly how they need to regulate. Then their nervous system's going to even feel even more dysregulated. And so actually having that choice and giving them the power on it to learn how it feels for them, even like actually practically, where do I feel anxiety in my body? I might feel it in my tummy, I might feel it in my throat. Again, everyone feels it differently. Do I feel sick? How does that look like for you? Because it's so different for everyone. Being allowed to stim freely as well, but then it's like, well, other people were looking at me. So if we had that classroom where it was just accepted and that is our ethos, because I think every child, neurotypical children, they all benefit from the visuals. They all benefit from maybe having a movement break. They all benefit from having, I love the using, what's the name, the bands, the
Oh,
fitness bands.
TheraBands,
Yeah, having those on the chair legs, things like that. It's so subtle.
including the
Having
adults
that,
too, like sensory
yeah,
breaks and circuits don't just support children, they support all humans. So having the teachers and the support staff, if you have them, modeling that too. If they're
yeah,
feeling a little bit anxious, maybe whilst they're teaching, maybe they have, something to fidget with. If they're sitting down and need a bit of grounding, maybe they put a lap blanket on. Maybe they wear their sunglasses, when it's bright outside. Whatever it is, they're modeling how they're meeting their own sensory needs. It might not look exactly the same for the children, but they're embedding that philosophy of we're all sensory beings and it is okay here.
absolutely. And then they naturally feel safe to do that, rather than, I feel like often, especially when you've got like one-to-one support as well, it's a natural being for us to say, "What's wrong? What's this? What can I do?" When
To try and
dysregulation's
fix
already happening,
it.
yeah, to fix it. Where I'm a big fan of waiting someone out. Wait them out, because when you're trying to teach emotion regulation, that in that moment, and this is for advice for parents as well, I say, wait them out, because you don't teach a drowning person how to swim when they're drowning. You wait it out, and you wait, and that's when you then teach strategies afterwards. But so often it's teachers in a mainstream school, and then you've got the likes of Ofsted coming in. It's almost an Ofsted are coming in that children are then feeling our anxiety, and then there's always behaviour. So it's in that panic, and it's like, well, actually, sometimes doing nothing in that moment is more powerful. Switch it down, minimize your language, and just step back. But as human beings, we feel like we always have to be busy. And actually, we need to model that as well. It's okay to be still. It's okay to be quiet and not fill that gap. But us as humans, we always want to fill that gap. And it's actually okay. And it's okay to, as well, like to model choosing friendships. Because we often refer, you hear, especially in primary classrooms, even at my daughter's nursery, they say, "Well, come and see your friends." And I'm thinking, well, they're probably not all our friends. And that's okay, because we all, as adults, we choose our friends. Who do we get along with? Why is it a target in an EHCP, especially in a mainstream school? I've actually seen this target before, and the target was to fit in with the peers. What does that mean? Why does
Wow.
it have to fit in? The way I crossed that out and got that taken out, but it made me so uneasy. I was like, to fit in? I don't think anyone fits in. We're
I
not
mean,
meant
that's
to.
basically telling them to mask.
Yeah, don't be autistic. Like,
Yeah.
no. And I don't think anyone really feels like they fit in. And I think
And that's not to
actually,
the benefit of the child, is it? And I think
no,
with all of these targets and with all of these resources, all of them are right if it's to benefit that young
no,
person. If you feel like it's to benefit the others, then that's when it's a red flag. So I feel like if you're a teacher, a parent, anything, if you just have a look at what you're asking the children to do, that's a really great measure of, is this benefiting the child? So we're asking them to go out of the room during music time. That could be a really good thing or that could be a really bad thing. It depends if it benefits the young person in question or not. If it's to benefit the rest of the class, then that's a red flag. If it's to benefit this particular child, well, yes, maybe that's a benefit for them, but maybe that's for the short term. But maybe long term, we could then be thinking, okay, well, how can we change this session so that they are included? But for the short term, maybe yes, you don't have to join assembly, for example. I always talk about inclusion in that way. Lots of my learners choose not to go into assembly, but it's still inclusion because we're giving them the choice. And we're accepting that they won't sit down and they will stim and pace and do their vocal stims during assembly, and that's accepted. But that's still inclusion, even though they very rarely choose to attend, because we're giving them the choice and it's for their benefit to attend and not to attend, depending on how they feel that day. That is still inclusion just because they're not in the room. So sometimes inclusion looks like not being in the room if it benefits that person in particular. And so yeah, that's kind of what I use to measure, am I being inclusive or not? Is what I am doing benefiting the young person, or is it for my benefit? Because actually I find that noise quite annoying. Or is it for the class's benefit because they're finding you really distracting, or you're, I don't know, messing up the displays in my room? Is that actually why a child is being removed? Or then maybe that's a red flag. That's not inclusion, that's exclusion, because you're not making it an environment in which they can, thrive. So
Yeah. And how are they gonna feel? How do they feel based on
yeah,
that choice? Do they might want to be excluded out of that, and that will regulate them, so absolutely do it. And
yeah,
that's the thing, inclusion doesn't always look like being included in a room. It looks like being seen for who you are and your needs.
accepted and
Yeah.
belonging. So sometimes belonging is more what we mean by inclusion than including someone. If somebody belongs, it means they are fully accepted for who they are and their needs, and that we will meet their needs no matter what, and they are loved no matter what, and wanted no matter what. If you really want inclusion in your classroom, then it means you really want the children to feel part of the classroom. So that means that making reasonable adjustments, doesn't it,
Yeah.
to your day and to your class. And every single teacher in every single class has a SEN class. They're all sensory teachers. I know I call myself sensory teacher, sensory classroom. All teachers have a sensory classroom, even if you don't think you do. I promise you, you do. You could be teaching A-level science and you have a very sensory classroom.
Absolutely, because like you said earlier, we are sensory beings, we all are. And I think just creating that ethos that, I see you, I hear you. And I love this phrase, like, I hear you, because I say that a lot. Like, sometimes, especially when when a child, especially with a PDA profile, is dysregulated and they want an answer there, and it's like, less words, you wait them out. Otherwise, you're getting that back and forth. And I might say, I hear you, but, just I hear you. But often people say, I hear you, but then they don't make the adjustments to actually, you're hearing me, but you're not listening.
Yeah, you
You're not listening to
understanding.
their behaviour. You're not listening to a child that's then avoiding school, a mainstream school, when actually all probably would have helped is when they finish their learning, they just need 5 minutes. As a teacher, you've got these grades to hit. Well, why aren't you doing this extension? Why aren't you doing this? And then the accountability comes on the children to be extending their own learning to, I think we should be teaching how to be responsible for your own regulation, because actually, if we were creating an ethos of young people that advocating for themselves and go, this isn't okay for me right now, I'm struggling, that's heard and respected. Because it would, as an adult, we always hear is, oh, we're preparing them for the real world. But actually, the real world is that I can
Okay.
say, no, me too. Because what is the real world? Let's change the real world then. If that's what it looks like. And we've all got a mask. I don't
Yeah.
want that. Because the real world, we do say, that doesn't feel okay for me. I'm not going to do that. And we
Yeah.
put our boundaries in place. Obviously, we do adapt and we mask slightly, because how I would speak to you would be how different to how I'd speak to my family, or how, you adapt, but that's the difference between adapting and masking. But teaching people to advocate is absolutely great. And, even using visuals, and then that leads on to being teenagers, and then kids that then can put their boundaries in place with adults, because they should be safe to. they're the ones that are going to keep themselves safe, and that because our young people with autism are vulnerable, and teaching consent, and that's something that people are very sheepish of. That's where it begins. When
That's
we
how I've
started.
explained it to parents actually with young girls. That are quite compliant, that are very people pleasers, that are high masking in class. This is how I explain it is when they're in a relationship, when they're in their older teens, in their early 20s, and they're in a relationship that isn't good for them, that is quite abusive, taking advantage of this people pleasing nature, this high masking nature that's putting everyone else's needs and wants before what feels good for their body, that puts them in an incredibly vulnerable position for abuse. And that is not what you want for your child, and that is not what you want for the students in your class. So, what are we actually teaching them? We need to be teaching them that if something doesn't feel good in your body, you need to speak up. And you need to advocate for yourself and advocate for your friends when you can see that they look uneasy, and you need to know that if somebody's asking you to do something that doesn't feel right and good in your body, then that means it's not good and right for your body and you shouldn't have to do those things.
Absolutely.
And it's horrible to use such an extreme example, but it is so common with adult women and adult autistics to be really vulnerable as adults in relationships because of that reason and taken advantage of for that reason. But it starts in the classroom and it starts at home. That feeling of like your needs don't matter, you know, you need to do what I say. It's not time for that now. Mask, 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 push down, push down, push down. Only then inevitably ends up to, yeah, incredibly vulnerable adults that are putting everyone else's needs before their own. And that, that to me isn't the real world. That's not a real world thing that I want to live in. I want to live in a world where women and all groups feel like they can speak up when something isn't feeling right. And that starts in nursery for all of our learners. If they don't want to hug somebody, if they don't want to wear their wellies because they're a bit uncomfortable, if they don't really like milk and they don't want to drink milk, that's when it starts. It seems trivial, but it starts then. That's when the learning happens for those later relationships and those later years of what we want to happen, because we don't
Absolutely.
want our young people to be in any compromising or vulnerable situation.
And that is when it's okay to come out of that green zone and be in that red zone healthily. You can be angry, but you can absolutely say calmly, no. And no is teaching young people that no is a full sentence sometimes. It's absolutely okay. And however that communication looks, like even on communication devices, it brings me joy when they are saying no. And it might look like a swear word at first. Advocate for yourself. Like that no is so strong because as well as that when I've worked with recently 7 to 19-year-olds, and with still then they haven't been taught, this is in an SEN provision, the proper name, scientific names of their genitals. And it's like, well, we need to keep you safe. And not only are you safe from other people for you to say no, but are you learning that everyone must be your friend because your EHCP says to interact with the variety of people and be friends? Is that person your friend because they say they're going to get you a Milky Bar, because they're going to get you a PlayStation? Are they your friend? What are their intentions? And we teach about enthusiastic consent, and I think it's so important to teach because not only does it make them vulnerable to not saying no themselves, but knowing when someone else is saying no, they might be going, yeah, no, like what does it actually look like? Enthusiastic consent, and then we talked about girls being vulnerable, especially to narcissistic relationships. That's something that a pattern that I've seen speaking to a lot of diagnosed women. But I think for men, unfortunately, it can look very different and it can look like gang grooming because they're going to buy you a nice PlayStation.
Mm.
They're going to buy you the trainers. They're going to buy this and that. They must be my friend. They're buying me something because that's not abstract. That is practical. And a lot of children, especially with a PDA profile, they see love as practical things. So if someone is saying they're going to give them the world, so we shouldn't be shying away from these conversations with teenagers, especially when they're on the spectrum, because I think people are scared to talk about sex. They're scared to talk about things like this because I don't know, it's seen as not age appropriate, but we need to talk about it in a way that is suitable to them to keep them safe.
Yeah,
And
and
they are scary.
that starts from teaching no, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
From you can teach that from 18 months old,
Uh-huh.
that when they stamp on the floor and lay on the floor, that's their no. And actually lots of the children in my class, no matter what age they are, I teach age 4 to 11, that's their communication because they don't have a spoken word. They use their body to communicate no. But we need to hear that, and we
Yeah.
need to honour that and respect that. And it might mean no, full stop, no. It might mean not yet. It might mean not today, or I'm a bit confused about what you're asking me. Like you said right at the beginning, behaviour is communication, and that's what we mean by that. And when you're saying I wait it out, that doesn't mean ignoring the behaviours. That's a message I had this week actually. It said, "I've been asked to ignore their behaviours, but that doesn't feel right for me. What do you do?" I said, "Oh,
Uh,
I know where they're coming from. They mean to wait it out. They mean to not pick up on every single little thing they're doing wrong. They mean not to just to focus on the main behaviour. So, yes, okay, normally we don't kick the door. Yes, okay, normally we don't slam the door or stamp our feet. Yes, okay, usually that wouldn't be accepted. But actually, right now, that isn't the big behavior. You know, swearing at me and using hand gestures isn't the big behavior right now. The big behavior or the big crisis is that they're really anxious because they have a trip coming up. That's actually the focus. So when it says ignore behaviors, the behaviors I'm ignoring are the minimal ones. The ones that I would normally not ignore, but actually today I'm only going to just regulate them further. I'm going to make it more of a crisis situation if I bring those up. So that's what I'm ignoring.
Not the child.
No,
That's the
not the child,
difference.
exactly, this is it. So when it's ignoring the behaviours, I'm not ignoring the child. In fact, I also when you say wait it out, step back and observe, that's also not ignoring the child. I do it very consciously because sometimes I don't wanna be in their space. Sometimes because they don't want me in their space. They just need time to, you know, calm down, regulate, and let it out actually. Because sometimes when it goes too far, they just need to kind of let it out and then come back. But I'm there, and I think that's the difference between ignoring and waiting it out, is I am there. I'm not be giving them eye contact. I might be at the other complete other end of the room, I might be the other side of the door, but my body language and my presence is saying, "I hear you, I see you, and when you're ready, I'm here." That's what I hope their senior leadership team meant by ignore behaviours.
I hope so.
What we don't mean is literally turning our backs on the children or the
Uh-huh.
young people and walking the other way, or saying, "I don't want to see you. I don't want to." That kind of hand gesture is not what we mean. In fact, we want open palms.
No.
We want open bodies, observing, waiting. I'm here when you're ready.
And then when they are ready, what is your tone of voice doing? How are you coming at them? You don't want to be hit with a snark. Okay, you done now? I've got
Yeah.
places to be.
Or
And
with
that sometimes,
shame or judgment.
exactly, yeah, it's
Yeah.
just okay. Even right then, is it the moment to then have that, you know, the
Probably not.
reconciliation? Not yet, but just let that moment of calm come. And like you say, we only focus on behaviours. We only intervene with behaviours when they're unsafe to themselves or others, and then you might intervene. But we like to think, if you're listening to them earlier on and giving them that space earlier on when they're swearing, which is I think who is that a problem for in that moment? Because especially even in a classroom, everyone's probably heard those swear words, and I think when you're
Yeah.
giving it that
And they've already
attention,
heard them. It's already too late. So,
yeah,
and
exactly,
if you're gonna pick up on it, you're only gonna hear more.
yep,
So and also ultimately, what is that behaviour telling you?
mm,
They've probably done that and slammed that door and kicked that thing and thrown that thing because they just need space. So hear that and give them that space. Coming up into their face and saying, "Don't you say that to me," is not
uh,
honouring and hearing what they're actually communicating with you.
it's
What they're
really not.
communicating with you is, "I need space, you've made me angry, or what you've done has made me angry, and I need space from you right now," is what they're saying.
And this is it. Like, is it an unsafe behaviour or is it just inconvenient for you? Like, it doesn't feel very nice to be sworn at, but You
But
can't have
actually, it's
an
probably the
ego when it
safest
comes
way
to
of releasing that energy. It's much better
exactly.
than being punched.
Yeah, I've had a TA say to me before, "Oh, they just told me to F off." And I said, "Why haven't you then?"
Yeah.
Like, in the nicest way possible. Yeah, that's not great how they said that, and we can talk about that
Yeah, and we could
later.
talk about that another time. We can talk about that
Yeah.
tomorrow or next week. We can have a session about, oh, I this made when you said that, I know you meant give space, how else
Mm.
could we have gone around that? How could would it help if you had a visual to ask that? Or maybe if you just, put your hand like this on the desk, I know that you need space, give that kind of talk about it in like a contract kind of way, an agreement kind of way of, I can see that you wanted this, and I hate that you were in a situation where you had no other choice but to swear. What could I have done better to help you not get to that point? Almost like put the premise and the responsibility on you changing, not them changing their behaviour.
Well, that's it, 'cause they're probably already really anxious, and you've just tipped that pot right over the edge, and then you've got the brunt of it, just like the parents probably do at home as well. And it's like, well, actually, what's going on? And they might not be ready to have that conversation right there and then, but they're clearly saying to you, something's going on with me right now. Consistency is key, but not consistency for every child, consistency for us,
For that
for those
child.
child.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what works for one might not work for the other.
Yeah.
Everyone's and that is why EHCPs are so important to a certain extent. That if they're written well and the parents and the young person have got say on that and that reflects them, that is when they are powerful because it's like, well, what do I need for that child? And that is then a legal binding agreement to do that and follow that through. And a lot often it's sensory breaks you hear in mainstream, well, that's rewarding bad behaviour. Well, actually, no, it's not. It's regulating so that you don't see that. It's not a reward. Sensory breaks, it's not first work, then you sensory break. It's, well, no, first regulated nervous system so I can think clearly. And I think that flipping that narrative and having teachers feel safe enough in the environment to do that because they've got the pressure of, exam scores and this and
Yeah,
that.
and that comes down to training and
Mhm.
the whole school philosophy, doesn't it? So if you're a head teacher or a
Absolutely.
Senko listening to this, maybe it's down to you to just create the philosophy in the first place of when you walk into a room and if there's a child, not in the room and they're like twiddling in the corner or up jumping on a bouncy ball in the corner or whatever it is, or out running circuits outside whilst the teacher is teaching, just to assume that that is what's happened and until, told otherwise, I suppose. Well, if anyone's listening to this and they want to learn more and find out more about you and your strategies and learn more, I'm sure there is. Where can people find you?
So Instagram currently is the best place. So I am currently working on making these trainings accessible to parents and schools that will be practically in real life and online run by myself, but also I'm trying to offer it in a way that is online as well. So that will be through my Instagram and that is on to sale on my stand store. So I currently have 3 modules and they are autism awareness and emotional regulation and social and communication, all targeted at the individual children that I've been kind of speaking about today, those SEN Inbetweeners. And I also, so Instagram victorious.lv is the best place to get me because I also offer one-to-one support as well because bespoke is the best as much as I can put those strategies out there. And but I think working with the family to create that bespoke support
Yeah.
is the best. The Instagram is the best place to get me currently.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining me today. Such an important conversation. Everybody make sure to follow Lauren and yeah, find out more about the SEN Inbetweeners. I certainly will be.
So thank you. I could have spoken for ages to you. It was wonderful to chat to you. Thank you.